Hello. So I had a teacher reach out and ask how they could save time when writing or creating tests, and well, it warranted a whole video. So here we are. The tips themselves are actually kind of short and simple. The first one, use a template. So just in talking about what I do, I'll try to get one up on the screen for an example. I model my test template after what our state exams look like. I teach in New York State, and we have what's called a Regents exam at the end of the year, and they release the test to us afterward. So we get all the test questions, we get the physical test even, and we can use it for practice for the following year. But the point is, like, we know exactly what the test looks like. So when I'm creating my tests, they look like miniature versions of the Regents exam that we give. Now, if you don't have a state test, you absolutely do not need to do anything like that. Or if your state test is like very flawed, you don't have to do that either. But come up with a template that works for you. So my calculus class, I just created a template because I've been experimenting with different ways of presenting the test, and I found one that I like, and it's just very simple. It's a table. I use Microsoft Word for everything. That's like a whole other story. You'll hear a lot of teachers talking about avoiding Microsoft Word to create whatever worksheets, anything like that. It depends on what I'm making, but I'll still use Microsoft Word, especially for tests, because I like to use the tables, and the tables are very robust, and when you know what you're doing, it's easy to work with. When you don't, I get that it's not. Maybe that'll be a future video, so let me know if you want to see that. But I have a table set up, and the main thing for my calculus and pre-calculus tests that I needed was a way to indicate the point value of the question. Because when I mimic the state test, it follows the same point values that would have been given on the state test. And being that there is no state test for the calculus and pre-calculus courses that I teach, I get to figure that out for myself. But it's helpful to have it there for myself when I'm grading and for students as they're completing the exam. My next tip is, as you're sitting down to create the test, start with a list of types of questions that you want to ask and the topics. So this is what I do for my other geometry class that doesn't have the state test at the end. They're like we call them the non-Regents geometry. Usually on the channel I refer to it as remedial because I don't know another word that most people would understand that kind of assimilates to what the course is. But for my class that doesn't take a state exam, that's what I do. Is I sit down and just think about, what have I taught, what do I want them to know, and what's most important here. So I'll make a list and then figure out what kind of questions I want to ask, and then I make up the questions from there. In that class, we spend more time on fewer topics. So with those tests, they're seeing like similar topics, but more variety of how the questions are being asked. So that's a possibility too. I should put up this disclaimer though, that if you don't know, I'm a math teacher, so I'm thinking in terms of math tests. I really don't know what a test would look like for other subjects. One thing that I seriously recommend as you're typing up your test is, if you're using multiple choice, put like a line in front of that question so that students have a place to write their response. That way it's a million times easier to go through and grade, and you can grade it a lot faster afterward. Whenever students skip this, I, kind of yell at them. Not actually yelling, but I'm like, what are you doing? You're making my life so much harder. Do you want me to grade your test right or not? I get so aggravated when students skip this step, because then I have to look for like what they circled or what they shaded in, and I tell them, you're increasing the chances that I grade this wrong, and we might not catch it, so you need to put the answers and the lines in front. So some kids I'm still working on that with, and it's, the end of the year. But I was out on maternity leave, so that's influenced a lot of things that have happened this year. My last tip is to create a question bank. So having just a bank of questions that you can go to and pull into your test makes your life so much easier. I do this for calculus because I'm still new to teaching it, and I just don't feel experienced enough to come up with my own questions. And the contrast is my non-Regents geometry course. I know that course inside and out, and geometry, and I can whip up my own questions pretty easily for that. But for calculus, Not yet. So I go to my textbook. I have my notes from when I was in high school taking calculus, from when I was in college taking calculus. So I'll pull questions from the tests that I still have from those classes, and I might use those or tweak them a little bit. But for geometry, I want to introduce you to something amazing. It's called Problem Attic. It is a website. I want to say it's free, but it depends on what kinds of questions you need. So if you're a New York State teacher, it is free. Like, what you'll need is free because the Regents is out there and you can get the questions and everything as it is. So that part is not paid. But certain states, to get your questions, it is paid. And then the frustrating thing is that if you decide you want paid access, you can't just buy it for yourself. Your school has to buy it and they have to buy it for everyone. This is something I was looking into when we were at home in 2020 teaching. I was like, I would love to be able to create a Google form using Problem Attic, and the only way to do it is to have the license, and you only get the license through your school paying for it. So just putting that out there just so you know. But what I've done is gone through all of the Regents exams that have ever been given since we started Common Core, and I created question banks for every unit that I teach. It did take work up front. It's something you could probably do in the summer, or if you somehow get downtime. In our state, we get downtime at the end of the year because of the state exams. If it's not our test that we're proctoring, and if it's not a test that we're grading, we're kind of just getting ready for summer, putting things away in our classroom, cleaning up. And occasionally there's time when I'm able to do something to prepare for next year. And this was one of those things, one of those projects that I took on. I created question banks by unit. So hang tight because I'm going to show you what this all looks like. So here's problemattic.com. I'll have the link down below. This is the first page that you see. Here they're showing you all the different things that this could sync up with, but I know that for Google Classroom you have to have a paid subscription. So I click up here to log in. If you've never used Problem Attic before, then you need to sign up first. So this is what you see when you log in. Anything that is clickable is available for free. So here they have assessments for lots of states. New York gets its own section. You have national assessments like PARCC, academic competitions. All this right here is under a school subscription. So Texas, Oklahoma, Virginia, and then there's also pre-algebra, pre-calc, SAT and ACT prep, AP Calc and Stats, AP Chem and Bio. It says Bio's in beta, and all of this requires a subscription. So here I'm creating a document. I can change the title. I just click here to rename. So just for this video, I'm just going to play around. So it's just a testing one. So the first thing that you do is select, then you arrange the questions that you selected. You're going to format it, make it a PDF, then you can export, and I've never used Score. So I just clicked on it. It's only available to subscribers. And again, your whole school district needs to subscribe. It's not like I could just pay money and have an individual subscription. So I'm going to go to Math under New York Regents because that's what I use. And then here they list out topics. So if I go to Geometry, there's a bunch of different topics here. And if I click the little plus sign, then it breaks it down into some others. So these right here are not Regents questions. They're kind of random. Actually, some of them look like questions from Regents exams that are older, like maybe even before I was in school. They all look like that Math 1, 2, 3 or Sequence 1, 2, 3 that we used to have type of questions. If I change the tab, it goes to exams. So yeah, Sequence 1, 2, 3, Math A, Math B, that's what I had in school. Integrated Algebra, Geometry, Algebra 2, and the more recent ones, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 Common Core. So I go to Geometry Common Core, then it lists out all the Regents exams that we've had. So they also have standards that you could look under. So if I went to the congruent standards, it lists out just the letters, but it will populate questions that match that standard. And then they have the Spanish versions of Regents exams, which in our state, they only include for algebra.
So that's like freshman year for most of us. So that's what we have available to us. So if I go to Geometry Common Core, I'll click on a Regents exam, and then any question that I like, I'm going to click add. So I'm just going to add like the first 5. Actually, I'll scroll down so we get some short answer in there too. So you just select as many as you like, and then if I wanted to, I could include questions from other exams. So you select all the ones that you want. This goes bottom of page, top of page. You can switch to where you were previously. Okay, we'll cycle through the tests. I was wondering about that. Okay, so yeah, previous and next category is the test before and after. I'm thinking about like back to where I was before. So you can go through all your tests, get what you want, go to arrange. Here you can move things around. So if I want to have all the multiple choice come before the short answer, I can do that. So there are 2 views. You have the grid view and the list view. The list view shows you more of a close-up so you can see everything. You can remove things if you want. You can change the color of the stars. I use this to categorize them on one of my question banks. Details is not another view, but they show you different things that you could select for a question. If you have that part 1 part at the top clicked, it'll allow you to write out directions. And then you can go to format. It's 2 columns. You can tell it how many problems per page you want, up to 4, or you can just let it do its thing. We can include an answer key. You could use ZipGrade. That I did not know until I clicked there. That is amazing. You have so many options. You could include workspace. You could determine how much workspace you want. You could decide to make workspace and an answer on the back, or like an answer booklet. You can change the headers, like you can change the title. You could add a custom field to different spaces like that. It comes with the name and the date on there, but you can take them off if you don't want them. You can put the border, you can use bold font. You get so many options here. It's incredible that this is all for free. You can change the font. I usually don't mess with that. Multiple choice, I like this option here. It's going to collapse these. So you can change the style. So I typically go for numbered because that's how our Regents exam is, which is not best testing practice. And then they give you more options. You can bold them. You can alternate letters. I don't know what they would do with the numbers, but that's so cool. And then for the Regents, they're optimized down. So instead of going across 1, 2, 3, 4, we go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll do that to mimic the Regents. You could also decide you want them vertical. You could decide on how many choices there are. For our exams, it's always 4. You could hide multiple choice answers when possible, like it knows. Give you more options here. Parts and problems. So if you were to divide up the questions into parts, you'd be able to do different things like start each part on a new page. And then there's page setup. You can change the margins. You can change the size of the paper, the orientation. And once we have everything how we want, so normally I just change the multiple choice to make sure it's optimized down and numbered. Everything else here is usually fine. I go to make a PDF, and this is what it will look like when it prints out. So we have 1 page of multiple choice, 1 short answer page, and another short answer page. So this one, they were able to condense down to 1 column, no problem. But on this one, they couldn't. So it's on 2 separate pages. So you might run into things that it won't format precisely how you want because of how the questions themselves are formatted. And it just is what it is in that case. And then at the end, you get an answer sheet. So you get some options. Normally, I just download the PDF. You can share it with students so they can download their own PDF from the link. Okay, so I've never seen this before, and I just wanted to check it out. So I can actually share it to a classroom. I didn't realize I had a sample class on my personal account, but there we are. Interesting. So if I was not on my personal account, then my actual classes would pop up and I could send this directly to them. The one thing that I was dying to have during distance learning was you can take this and export it as a Google form. Like they do everything for you and create a Google form, and then you can share that with your students. I wanted that so bad, but my school did not want to do a whole subscription when I'm the only one asking for it, which makes perfect sense. Formula charts I've never used before, but I guess you can add that. And then the advanced is for paid users. And then I stop here because the export features are for subscribers. So if I go up here to where it says organize, you can see the other things that I've created. I'm going to go up here to test and just delete that one. So you can see this is not the most organized things. I have some that are untitled, but that's because this is usually like me, like quickly running to put stuff together. But I did start off organizing it. So you can see you can create folders and put things into folders. So I have Common Core questions right here. And so I have all of my units with every Common Core question listed. So I have not updated this since like 2019. So you can see I've been like updating them as I go. So most recently we're on Unit 9, Circles, and these are all the questions that they've asked on the Regents exams. So over here on the side, I could jump to questions. I can go into list and see them. And in list mode, I didn't show this before, but I could just drag and drop to move them to wherever I want. But this right here is my test question bank. So what I do is I format it. And here it's already set up to be numbered, optimized down. I go to make PDF. And then I just download this. This is so many pages. And I'll even print it out. And that way I can just go through and circle the questions that I want to use for the test that I'm about to create. And the same for the review. So I like to find questions for the tests, and then I'll find similar questions for the review. But I get everything right from here, and it makes it so much easier to create the test.
So there's a new tool that I hope you're able to use and love as much as I do. And I just wanted to talk about one last thing. Nobody asked this, but just in case this is information that you'd find helpful. How many questions do I put on a test? So my unit tests mimic my state test. Our state test is, I believe, 86 points that students earn over a period of 3 hours. I want my unit tests to only take one class period, which is 42 minutes. So I did the math, and for 42 minutes, they could earn 20 points, and that would be equitable to the 86 points for the 3 hours. It was actually like 21 point something, but I just rounded down to 20. So I take all state exam questions for my geometry tests, and I pull from that question bank. Sometimes I reword them or change parts of the question because I don't want it to be easy for students to find, because even though I collect their cell phones for tests, sometimes they're dishonest and they left their phone at home that day and end up like trying to Google the questions. And with our state exam questions being released, you can find the exact questions pretty easily. So I will tweak the wording or the numbers or what the question's asking just to mix it up so that it's not so easy for them to cheat. But the questions from our Regents exam are either worth 2 points, 4 points, or 6 points. So I'll do some mix depending on what's available for the unit. Like there's not a whole lot of 6-point questions. That I believe is only the proofs. It's been a while since I've done Regents review. I'm getting ready for it right now. But I just take what I can. At most, we're gonna have 10 questions on a test. And that would be if they're all 2-pointers, which is multiple choice and short answer questions. Now, since I've done the math and made this unit exam equitable to the state exam, I typically do not allow students extra time to complete the test because it's 10 questions that they have 42 minutes to do. That should be enough time. If it's not, it depends. Situation by situation, I may allow more time. Typically, I do not. So that's everything I can think of to help you save time for writing tests. Plus, a whole lot of other information that nobody asked for, but I hope this video is helpful, and as always, thanks for watching.